Hello and welcome to HSMR Chess. Once again, back with an absolute classic in the history of chess. For this video, I want you to imagine that you are a man called Boris Spassky. And we have to travel a little bit back in time to 1970, where you have the black pieces in a very, very important match. Because you are representing your country as the chess world champion, the Soviet Union, in a match played between the Soviet Union against a team consisting of players, the best players from the rest of the world. And there is a number of boards, and as the world champion you play on board number 1, so you will be facing the strongest non-USSR player the world has to offer. And who is that? It is actually, in 1970, my countryman, the chess legend Bent Larsen. Bent Larsen, that's how you say his name. Just an absolutely amazing player, extremely original and colorful character. And I guess I have to make some more videos on this guy at some point. And you may ask yourself, why is it not Bobby Fischer with the white pieces? How can it be that Bent Larsen is playing board 1 and board Fischer, and Bobby Fischer is only playing board 2? How is that? How is that even possible? Well, Bent Larsen actually was that good. So they wanted to put Fischer on board 1. Bent Larsen said, you know what, guys? I won the 2 strongest tournaments this year. I received the chess Oscar, and Bobby hasn't been playing that much. And to everybody's surprise, Bobby stepped down and left the number 1 spot to Bent Larsen. There's a little wrinkle to that story, because there is a theory that Bobby Fischer was afraid of Spassky, and he knew he had to at some point challenge him for the world championship title, and he was afraid of him. He had a minus score against him at this point, and he had never beaten him at this point. So that's a theory also. But you are Boris Spassky, and you are faced this great Dane sits down. But maybe you are inspired today. Bent Larsen on the very first move hits you with pawn to b3. So a very Larsen-esque type of approach to chess. He said, you know, you can play anything. This is called the Larsen Opening. And it has a dubious reputation, in large part because of what Spassky, or what you did against this with the black pieces. First, e5. So if white is not going to stake a claim in the center, well, let's go ahead and grab it with black then. Bishop to b3, of course, fianchettoing the bishop, that's the point of b3. So bishop to b2, I think I said b3, bishop to b2. Okay, this attacks the pawn. Spassky, or you, very calmly just develops the knight and protects the pawn. And here we see another original, kind of cool move from Larsen. he plays c4. So first he put pressure from the flank on the center pawn with the bishop. Now he uses this f pawn to discourage you from playing pawn to d5. So he's playing in a hyper-modern style, attacking the center as white even from the flank. You are not particularly scared by this. You are the chess world champion and you feel that you understand chess pretty well. You develop a knight and say you can do fancy hyper-modern stuff, but I believe in the principles of chess. Knights before bishops, attack and control the center. Okay, so what did Larsen play? Well, he is not putting a pawn in the center. He is playing knight to f3, coordinating an attack. Hey, are you ready to attack? Oh, I'm totally ready to attack. Cool. What should we attack? Well, what about this pawn? Oh, great idea. So they are attacking this pawn. And you could, of course, be timid. And maybe you are timid. Sometimes I'm timid and afraid. But today you are Spassky. So you can just trust in yourself. You don't need to play a timid move like d6. No. This upstart thinks that he can play games and break the principles of chess against you, Boris Spassky. No, no, no. We will advance this pawn. Don't you think that's a good idea, Boris? So this attacks the knight. And that's one of the downsides of not having played e4 yourself. Means that now this pawn can advance. Knight to d4 by Bent Larsen. So what, Mr. World Champion, what do you want to do? This knight is just provoking you here in the center. So you develop both your knights. Do you want to capture this knight maybe? Then Larsen will recapture and have a nice bishop in the center that you can't even really chase away. No, not you. You play bishop to c5, attacking the knight twice and just saying, you know what, Bent Larsen, I want to control the center. If you are not occupying the center, then I will. Now this knight is kind of put on the spot. You don't really want to defend it like this because you would have a bad pawn structure. So Larsen's plan was to capture like this, saying madam to the queen, and you recapture. What pawn do you want to recapture with? There's not really a right or wrong answer. Both pawns are actually fine. But it's a matter of style here, and it's a matter of believing in the principles of chess. So if white is breaking the principles of chess, then you should punish that so that white doesn't have the time to find a way to justify this original creative play. And if you capture with this pawn here, you capture towards the center. That's a principled idea. And if you play this pawn here later, you can see it will be supported. But it doesn't come with that much force. So what Spassky did was capturing with the d pawn. Why? Because this immediately opens up the queen, and this file can be very, very useful for you later. You can also put rooks on this open file. So this is what Morphy would have done, and maybe you don't know this about Boris Spassky, maybe you don't know this about yourself, if we are going with this little roleplay thing. But you are a universal player. World champion Boris Spassky was hailed as the first universal player. So if the position demanded that he played like Morphy, he would. If the position demanded that he played like Capablanca, he would. Capablanca. So he didn't have a style. And that is something Magnus Carlsen is very inspired by. So he doesn't have a particular style. He's not trying to force a sacrificial attack if that's not the correct thing. But if it is the correct thing, oh, you are coming with the sacrifices. Alright. And this typical, like this is exactly what Morphy would do. Just go for dynamism and for piece activity. Now we have a bunch of threads. You can advance this pawn to just mess everything up down here. You can do a lot of things. So Bent really needs to figure out what to do here to not get run over. So his solution is to play pawn to e3. And now you can just go ahead with the principles of chess. You developed both your knights, then you develop the bishops, because knights before bishops, right? So you just develop your bishop. And you just say, I just own the center. You need to find a way to try to justify this play, because I'm not like these normal, grandmasters that you play against. Yeah, sure, they are some of the best in the world, but you think to yourself, am the best in the world. I am the world champion. Well, so you are not playing any games with me that I don't already know. Queen to c2. So this could have different ideas. For instance, maybe we could want to play d4 at some point. If you follow chess memes, you know that en passant is forced. That would be taking like this. And then we will need some justification now, because obviously the queen and the bishop protects this. So if I try to recapture here, you can recapture and I will lose a piece. So that is one justification or one point of this bishop. So Bent will have to find a way to play this move. So he needs a way to protect this square. And the long-term plan would be knight c3 and long castle to get the rook on this file to help to be able to push this pawn. So you think to yourself, my job is to not allow him the time to do that. So you think to yourself, I will be sure to claim this file. I will own this file. I will then temporarily move the queen out of the way so that I can make the long castle queenside first, and have the rook here prophylactically taking care of the positional threat of playing d4. And yeah, it's a little bit it shows how, if you know your chess really well, that you, without doing that much, you can just take every little thing that your opponent leaves behind, everything that bent, and he didn't sacrifice a piece or blunder a piece or anything, but he just didn't use every move to gain the maximum effect of that move. He tried to be a little bit too original, and you just played strong, principled, normal chess moves, and you just ate up all the positional advantage in the position, and now you have a very, very strong position without having done anything that spectacular or special. So now, Bobby Fischer said, tactics flow from good positions. Now it's time to show your genius soon, to take this momentum and this energy that you have built up and convert that into some brilliant tactics and really get at White's king. White also wants to develop their bishop, but it's not really that easy. You can't go here. We already looked at that. If you try something like this, well, how are you really ever getting through this? So Bent decided that e2 would be the best square for this bishop, and you again just played a principled, strong, sensible positional move, castled, getting the king out of harm's way, automatically developing the rook. That was why you captured away from the center to have this strong file. And now Larsen played the decisive mistake. His position is bad. Probably very few players in the world would be able to hold a draw from this position against you, Boris Spassky, but maybe a guy like Larsen or Fischer, like a couple of these absolute top grandmasters, maybe could do it from this position if they find the absolute correct way. Maybe they could hold a draw. But Larsen insisted with pawn to f4. He insisted on this strategy. He didn't cut his losses and saying, okay, good old Boris Spassky, the world champion, he didn't allow me to get anything for free. I didn't face him. He wasn't afraid of my creative original play, and he didn't change his gears. He just doubled down on his strategy, saying my strategy is that now I own these two squares in the center. I have the pawns and I have my bishop, and you are never going to own these two squares. They are under my control, and that is my strategy, and I will use that to win. And now it's time for you to show your brilliance in a flashy way. This was played in a great auditorium. There are many players because you had a whole team of all the best Soviet players against all the best players from the world team. And everybody's, silent. Don't want to disturb the players. Chess was a big spectator sport back in the USSR in the old days. Okay, are you ready to start some brilliance? Yep, I'm ready. Hey guys, I got an idea. You do? Yep, I'ma jump here. Alright. That makes a lot of sense, because now the queen can potentially come in here with a check, also we are attacking this pawn twice. So we are potentially looking at a sacrifice of the rook here. If the knight ever moves, because if you have to recapture with the queen, you can see the bishop can come in here, and I can't go over all the variations, but in most of these variations this knight will be able to fork the king and the queen, and you will win. Here Larsen played the best move in the position, but against a player of your caliber it is basically over. Larsen played pawn to g3. So we have the rook, the queen, the two bishops and the knight participating in the game. As a universal principled player, you look at your pieces, scratch your head, think, okay, is there something I can do before I start just throwing all the pieces at him? Is there something I can do to, in a principled positional way, to increase my advantage? Of course, this rook is not part of the game yet. So what can we do? We play h5 with the plan of advancing the pawn to get this file open for the rook, so that all the pieces will participate in the attack. And here maybe Larsen breathed a sigh of relief, because he played h3. And now the knight really doesn't seem to have time to do anything. Maybe you could sacrifice here, doesn't seem really to work. And if you have to move the knight back, then we are not activating the rook. So you have to figure out a way. You have to figure out a way. You have to figure out a way to get this rook involved. How about a way where you also make this pawn into a really, really strong attacking piece? To make it sort of a star player, what can we do? And then it hits you. Pawn to h4. Now that is a move and a half. And in the tournament reports, we have like journalists describing what was happening in the auditorium. And when people saw this move, there was a lot of shuffling of feet and a lot of whispering in amongst them, because something astonishing is about to happen. And they like described in a really cool way how like you could feel like the special energy in the room. Something truly remarkable is going to happen. Larsen played pawn takes knight. This pawn is supported by the bishop. So your idea is not to recapture it and get in like this. Your idea is to turn this pawn into, this is of course Harry the H-pawn, so Ginger GM would be proud to capture here. Turn this guy into just the strongest pawn this world has ever seen. And now Larsen is beginning to realize this is, Spassky is especially inspired today. So what can he do? If he captures the rook, it will be replaced by another rook. There will be nothing to defend the back rank, and that will end in checkmate very quickly. But rook to g1, attacking the pawn and winning a tempo, because now this bishop is still attacked. You know that you are already down a knight, so if you don't move the bishop, you will be down a knight and a bishop, and then the cramped position of white will not be that big of a deal. You just need to play knight c3 and castle. You will have an easily winning position. So therefore you of course expect that this bishop will have to move somewhere, and there is not really a square where it can really attack you. So, Mr. Spassky, what was your move? What was your justification? And this next move, I mean, this is one of the most coolest moves in chess history. And when you played it, the entire auditorium reportedly erupted in applause, because it's just such an amazing move. Have you found it? It's rook to h1. Yep. So, if you're playing me and I played this move, nobody is like applauding, because they'll just look at that move and say that is a blunder. He just played the worst move possible, and like he didn't even capture anything. That rook can clearly be taken. But when you see Spassky play a move like that, you know something amazing is about to happen. So this rook is now attacking this rook. The rook is pinned, it can't move. Pinned to the king. So what can you do? Well, you can of course capture. So Bint captured your rook. Okay. And Harry, the h-pawn, shows his ambition, the strongest pawn in the entire world. Pawn to g2. And how cool is that? Of course, just leaving this bishop. Yeah, no problem. Like, you know that there's absolutely no way that white has time to capture that anyways. And when you move this pawn here, you're attacking the rook. You're also freeing up this diagonal. So when the rook moves, if the rook moves and try to prevent the queen from coming in with a check, well, then that is check, because you make a new queen. So you have to stay on the back rank here. But if you don't move the rook, I'll capture it. If you go here, queen check here, king here, and then temporarily sacrificing the queen. The rook can't capture because it's pinned to the king. Best move would be to capture the queen. You recapture, check, and mate. So that won't do. Instead, Larsen tried the quite imaginative rook to f1. It doesn't work to capture the rook here. The correct move is queen check. So that king has to go here. If you try to block the check with the rook, queen here will result in checkmate. Promoting will result in checkmate in a couple of moves. So king moves out of the way. That means that you can now capture. This is check because we turn this into a queen or a rook. Let's just turn it into a rook. In this position, Larsen resigned, and the whole auditorium just went nuts. But I'll show you the checkmating sequence. Only one legal move. Capturing the rook. So you just have to be a little bit precise here. Use this bishop. Check. If you try to block with the bishop, then this is checkmate because king can't move and this can't block because it's pinned. And if king here, queen check, only one legal move, interpose the queen, you capture that, and that is checkmate. So, very well done. You must be proud of yourself. Let me know if you like this game. Let me know also if you like this sort of random idea I came up with like turning it into a role play. I know it was a little bit improvised because I literally came up with it during the recording of the video, but let me know if you liked it, because I thought it was quite fun actually. Well played, Spassky. And to you, to the real you, thanks for watching. Thanks so much for watching. I hope